Welcome to Steel Mint Events. I'm Ruchira Singh. A lot of you may have walked out on the roads and really wondered at some of the new construction coming up. Almost like a child's Lego, it comes up overnight. And a lot of you may have also looked at this shiny steel tubes and pipes, which transport everything these days, from cooking fuel to even water. So that's the industry for you, that's steel tubes and pipes. And if you have a look at India's total steel market, it's at 100 million tons. And steel tubes and pipes, it's a small slice, 8% of the market. However, growing very fast. It has a CAGR of 7 to 8%. And in today's webinar, we'll put the spotlight on this market. So the webinar is titled, Indian Steel Pipes and Tubes, is a big growth expected. So the sponsors of this webinar is PP Rolling Mills Manufacturing Co. Private Limited. This company is a leading turnkey project supplier from India, and it is into design, engineering, manufacturing, and erection and commissioning of hot rolling mills for long products, mass tube mills, gearboxes for high torque applications, EOT, cranes, and manufacturing of heavy precision engineering equipment. So let me introduce the panelists to you. So the first panelist is a rep from our sponsor company. He is Mr. Yogesh Kumar Bhatia. He is head tube mills at PP Rolling, and he has 45 years of experience in steel tube industry and has helped set up more than 160 tube mills around the world. Our next panelist is Mr. Renel Anthony. He's Senior Manager, Metal One Corp, 11 plus years of steel trading exposure with this trading outfit, and the specialization is API grade pipes. The next panelist, Mr. Anubhav Gupta. He's Chief Strategy Officer at APL Apollo Group. He joined the company only last year. However, his backing is in fundamental research with investment advisory and global investment banking firms. The next panelist is Mr. Sudhir Goyal. He's MD of Madhav KRG Limited. Joined the business in 1995, and in 2002, there was a TMT rolling mill, and that is how the whole business started for him. We have Mr. Godfrey John. He's Director and Business Unit Head of India, APAC, and EMENA at Welspun Corp. He has over 25 years of experience, and he's worked with two major pipe manufacturing companies specializing in oil and gas applications and others. He's played a pivotal role in making Welspun Corp a major force amongst the top 5 players of the world. The next panelist is Mr. Ujjal Chakrabarti. He is Executive in Charge, Tubes Business Unit at Tata Steel. He heads a profit center with annual sales of more than 3,000 crore rupees. 29 years of experience in operations, supply chain, business analysis, and project management. So welcome to you all, gentlemen. And I'm also joined today by Nitish Shukul. He is AGM at Steelmint Info Services, and he is going to be my co-host. So welcome to you all. And I'd also like to extend a very hearty and warm welcome to all of the participants who have logged in today. Thank you very much for your interest in Steelmint. So for your benefit, I'd like to explain to you the flow of this webinar. So we first have mini presentations from several of the panelists. And after that, we will have a Q&A session between Nitish, myself, and the panelists. And after that, it's going to be your turn to ask questions. So do put in your questions in the Q&A box down below on your screen. Do identify yourself and put in your company name as well. So we can now get started with the very first presentation. It's a small one. It is on Steelmint and it's going to tell us what it is all about. So Nitish, I hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Ruchira ma'am, and I welcome everyone to this webinar, and thank you for taking out your time. Let me just run you quickly through a very small presentation to set the context around this webinar. So I'm just sharing my screen. I hope my presentation is visible to everyone. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, just to set the context, the steel tubes and pipes contribute to roughly about 8% consumption of the overall steel that is produced in India, right? So, like we can already see in this PowerPoint presentation, so we have 27% that goes for construction, 35% that goes for infrastructure, 15% that goes for capital goods, 9% is for automotives, and then pipes and tubes contribute roughly about 8% of the overall consumption, followed by consumer durables, which is at 5%, and then very minuscule is 1% for various other purposes. Let me again quickly move on to the next slide. So this is roughly the capacity that at which India operates, right? So as per our understanding, the pipes and tubes capacity stands at roughly about 21.5 million ton. So that's divided into three: welded, seamless, and casted. So welded is then further divided into ERW and SAW. So welded stands at around 16.30 million ton. ERW stands at around 9.5 million ton. SAW, which is submerged arc welded, that stands at around 6.8 million ton. Seamless stands at about 1.5 million ton, and casted, which is again divided into ductile and cast iron, that stands at around 3.7 million tons. Moving on to the next slide. So the Indian structural pipes and tubes capacity, as we see, is roughly, like I said, is about 9.5 million tons. So the major states that contribute to this capacity is basically Chhattisgarh, that's at 1.78 million ton, followed by Uttar Pradesh, which is at 1.76 million ton. Then we have Maharashtra at 1.73 million ton, West Bengal at 0.81 million ton, and so on and so forth. So, you can see the overall pipe capacity from a structural perspective in my slide. Moving on to the next slide. So the Indian SAW, which is submerged arc welded and seamless pipe tube capacity, as per our analysis, stands at about at around 8.3 million ton. And the major states, where these manufacturing units are located is Gujarat, which is at 5.15 million ton, followed by Karnataka at 1.30 million ton, followed by Maharashtra at 1.50 million ton. And then there are various smaller other states as well, which manufacture SAW and seamless pipes. Moving on to the key drivers of growth, right? So the first is the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana scheme, which was launched by the government of India to boost the affordability of houses against an inflated real estate. The scheme aims to achieve its objective of housing for all by 31st March 2022, which is also the 50th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, by constructing 1 crore houses across the nation. The second key driver is the Bharatmala Pariyojana, which is a centrally sponsored and funded road and highway project by the government of India. So the total investment for 83,677 kilometer committed new highways is estimated at roughly about 5.35 lakh crore, making it the single largest outlay for a government road construction scheme. Moving on to the third point. So there is an increase in demand by quality residential projects, and also boost in the e-commerce industry, which is leading to a lot of construction of warehouses, which in turn is fueling the demand for ERW pipes. And lastly, the fourth point is that the government is extremely driven and focused to construct new highways, bridges, flyovers, and several other public utilities that is driving the demand for ERW pipes. Let me quickly move on to SNS pipes. So the first point is that, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has laid down plans for expansion of national gas grid to 27,000 kilometers from the present 16,200 kilometers. So currently around 7,000 kilometers of pipeline is under construction, and the share, of natural gas in India energy basket is just about 6.2% against a global share of 23.4%. So the government plans to significantly increase this capacity to over 15% in the next decade. And this is where we see a major demand coming for SNS pipes. The second point is that, with the completion of 10th CGD bidding round, the CGD would be accessible in 228 geographical areas, covering more than 400 districts spread across 27 states and union territories, covering approximately 70% of the population and 53% of its geographical area. So that will significantly spike a demand in SNS pipes. The third is, very clearly, so there's a effort to boost Make in India, right? And further the goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The state-run GAIL is processing line pipe tenders of more than 1,000 crore for about 1 lakh ton steel procurement by September 2020. This would translate to progressive supply of 800 kilometer of line pipe from domestic bidders. And my last point is, that in the budget 2020-2021, 39,029 crore is proposed for water sector spread across Ministry of Jal Shakti, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, Ministry of Rural Development, and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So this is where we broadly understand that the demand will come from. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitish. That was really short and sweet. Thank you, with a lot of information that sets the tone, I hope. So the next presenter would be Mr. Chakrabarti from Tata Steel. Mr. Chakrabarti, can we please have your presentation?
So I have a small presentation too, and so I would request you to show it up. First of all, thank you so much to Steel Mint and my co-panelist, Mr. Bhatia and others. It's a real pleasure to be here to speak about the tube division of Tata Steel and also steel industry at large. So just move to the next slide. So broadly, as you introduced, that steel is, or tube is, a very small pie. It's small, but it's strong and also beautiful. That's what its identity of tube is. So if you can move to the next slide, please. So there you will see the broad breakup of the industry. Yeah. So that's basically my agenda in terms of the presentations about the industry of tubes and pipe in India, and the tube division of Tata Steel, and what are the various segments, what are the product and services that we are offering, and the future demand opportunities that we mostly discuss. If you move to the next slide, it's somewhat in aligned to what was shown by Nitish, but it's primarily on the demand side. And as we are seeing, that it's about 10% on total. So you mentioned about 8%. So we see it between 8 to 10%. And it's somewhat in the global trend, because if you see in the global steel consumption is about 170 million ton of tubes, is around 10% of the global. And if you look at in the demand broadly, it is on the steel and ductile side, and the ERW, seamless and saw. This is about the demand. That's what we believe. That could be the number could be different, but this is what our understanding. And the Tata Steel's presence in the ERW segment, as we've seen between Tata Steel and our TSBSL, the company that we acquired recently, combined, we have a presence in this segment, and also in the metallics through our Tata Metallics is a separate company through which we are present. In terms of the per capita consumptions, it's quite low. If you see by the global standard, it is less than half of the global standards and about 1/5 of the China. So there is a lot to proceed and going forward. Just move to the next slide. So primarily, if we see in the segment-wise presentation that we have, Tata Steel is presence is primarily in the agriculture, which is in terms of the conveyance segment. The construction is quite a prominent segment. It is where the Tata Structura product that we have actually launched the brand in the construction segment of the hollow section. We also present in automotive. We are one of the largest supplier of the automotive combined with PSBSL. And if you just go slightly below in the last point is about the boiler, where we are also present. So if you see, it's quite a comprehensive presence of the company spread out across the all segment of the tube in the ERW segment. So primarily our presence is in the ERW segment. We also have our Tata Steel BSL, where we are actually present in automotive and constructions primarily, and also in the oil and gas segment in a small scale, primarily in the oil, gas, and in the water conveyance segment. Move to the, if we can move to the next slide. These are some of the quality product that Tata Steel is offering. Tata Pipes is one of the oldest Tata Pipe brand in the conveyance, which is primarily present in the conveyance segment, including the borewell segment and also in the plumbing segment. In the plumbing, we have a large presence through this Tata Pipe brand, and this plant through which we are producing is the only Green Pro certified, CII Green Pro certified plant in terms of the sustainability, as mentioned in the slide, as you can see the logo. And also we are talking about the various size range that Tata Pipe is present. We are also working in the value-added segment in terms of coating, where you can see the Tata Pipe G1, which is our premium segment in terms of the adding life of the overcoating, where we have a thin organic coating based pipe to have the extended life over the GI pipe, as mentioned in the slide. Through our Tata Dakshara, which is the Tata Metallics offering, which is the DI pipe in the resins of 80 to 800 NB and about 1100.7 thickness, that which you are present. That's the kind of comprehensive presence in the conveyance segment. If you move on to the next slide, let's talk about our presence in the constructions, which is the Tata Structura, which is the premium brand and which is the first brand in the hollow section, which we launched way back in 2005, when even the hollow section usage was very limited in the country. And that's the time we introduced the product, and this product is one of the premium segment in terms of the presence in all key projects, large section project that we are also in the retail segment that we offer. And with the acquisition of PSBSL, our size range has actually grown from small to as large as 400 to 400, 400, 200, 610 NB in the dia. So we are also offering in the wide range in terms of the structural offering. The Tata Structura Z Plus is the galvanized section, which is the for the corrosion protections and high maintenance oriented plant where there's a required corrosion resistance. That is where we are offering this 360 GSM Tata Structura Plus. And another important aspect is our presence in the digital space in the IHB segment, where through our offering of Tata Steel Ashiana, and this is something, an interesting subject, where during the COVID period, we have seen a significant movement through digital e-commerce based selling through our platform Tata Steel Ashiana, through which we sell not only Tata Structura, but all our Tata Steel brand from one-stop e-commerce platform, which is Tata Steel Ashiana. So that's about the product offering and service that what we are talking about. This is the discussion primarily what Nitish also mentioned in his presentations, that what all that promise that we are talking about. He talked about that 1 crore Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, that is the infrastructure space. But recently, Government of India has announced 100 airport by 2025. And that's with an investment of nearly 1 trillion Indian rupees. That includes not only the small airport, but also the expansion of the large size airport. We believe airport and also in the railways, as mentioned in this slide, and also the pipeline, as we recently, there was the government as talked about to the Jal Shakti Ministry, the Jal Jeevan Mission, where we had currently nearly 28% reach in terms of piped water, which they wanted to reach to 100% by 2024. That's a significant opportunity that segment offers. We are also talked about various housing and construction in terms of smart city. We are talking about various skyscraper that we are talking about, urbanization project, and also HVAC and all those things. We also can hear a lot from our other co-panelists about oil and gas, and also in automotive. In automotive, we are also would like to move from the current ERW to high strength in terms of reducing the thickness and weight of the vehicle. That's where lightweighting is the big effort that we are going into. So that's about my presentations in terms of the growth opportunity, and we can discuss further as we go along during the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chakraborty. That was a really nice peep into the company, into what you do. So our next presenter is Mr. John of Wellspun Corp. Mr. John, could you please go ahead with your presentation?
Nitish, could you just switch it on, please? So the presentation is just a small brief on what we do and how we started off and where we are. That's a wonderful shot of an oil pipeline or a gas pipeline going into the sea. And that's where our specialty is mostly onshore and offshore pipelines. And we talk about large dia pipes here. Can you just move on, Nitish? That's a very small snapshot on what we do. We have a longitudinal facility, we have a spiral facility. The facilities are spread across the geographic areas like Saudi and US and of course India being a major contributor, total 2.67 million tons of global capacity. Associate facilities for bends and coating. Coating is something like 32 million square meters, external, internal, and we of course added a concrete coating because we went mainly into the offshore side. So this is the whole gamut of our operations. And as I said, it is spread over US, where we have a facility in the US at Little Rock, primarily catering to the Americas. We have a facility in Middle East, mostly catering for our Middle Eastern requirement. And of course, India caters to the rest of the world. So it's quite a substantial capacity we have ramped up. And it has been active for a few years now. That's how we started off 1995 as Gujarat Stal Roran Limited, Wellspun Gujarat Stal Roran Limited. And since then, we have went on a sort of establishing new pipe mills, El Mill in 2000. Then we came up with the new facility at Anjar when, of course, the earthquake rehabilitation package was announced. And we were the first of the few companies to move into Anjar. And Anjar, that area now is one of the global, benchmarks for capacities as far as pipe making is concerned. A lot of pipe companies have come up in the Kutch area, and Mundra being a very, very strong, Mundra and Kandla both being very, very strong ports. That actually opened out the global market for all of us, all of Indian pipe manufacturers. We went on to do the facility at Little Rock, Arkansas in 2009, and then of course the plate mill in Anjar, and so on. So today, when we talk about, we are quite well spread across the globe, and we use these facilities to cater to most of the oil and gas requirements which we see. We look at niche projects, not run-of-the-mill projects, and that's our specialization. We have sort of a penchant for taking on challenges, and that's probably where we are as of now on the global map. Yeah, during this existence, we have had the privilege of working on some of the most challenging projects, as we call, both in ELSO and ETSO, longitudinal and spiral. We did the deepest pipeline, which is at the depth of 8,333 feet, approximately in the Gulf of Mexico. We did the heaviest pipeline in the Middle East, EGAT-4, which is 15 tons of pipe, so not a light pipe at all. The longest pipeline project, the TCPL Keystone project, which has been infamous due to various blockages and stoppages which happened in US, but we were one of the most prominent contributors to that project. One of the highest pipelines in the country, Peru, LNG, at a height of 16,000 feet approximately. Highest thickness in sour service, which is a Saudi Aramco project. We did a 42.9 mm thick X65, very sour service. So overall, there's a lot of variety of pipes that we have done, and across various geographies, across various terrains, various environments, and that's probably our strength right now. And we have been doing more than 1 million tons almost for the last 5 years. So 1 million tons every year. I think it's a sort of a benchmark with most of the pipe making companies across the globe. Courtesy our initial foray into exports, we were fortunate to have interacted with a lot of biggies in oil and gas. Take the name of BP, ExxonMobil, Shell, Total, Statoil, Gazprom. So there's a wide variety of clientele that we catered to, and we also worked with a lot of project owners like TransCanada, Enbridge, and so on. So in the US. We also do water pipes, as you see, there's a GWSSB, GWL, which comes in. And we work with engineering companies who are developing the product so as to get the best out of the product for a certain specific project. These are all custom-made pipes. So we can fine-tune it according to the requirements. And yeah, that's how we develop our product along with the engineering consultants. And we make it tuned to the kind of project it is used. So that's a snapshot on our collaboration with various technical agencies. We have a very strong supply chain. We do not make our own steel, so we do have to have a very strong supply base for our spiral, longitudinal, or ERW pipe mills. And we have a approved vendor list, and most of the steel mills that you see are really on the top of the world as far as the quality and reliability is concerned. And we do get into some hazardous areas, so we cannot take any chance on the raw material. So we restrict our supply chain to a very limited audited mills, and they are of course repeatedly audited, and that's our backbone, to be honest. And we acknowledge their contribution in this whole thing. We are currently doing some of the very stringent pipeline projects, and that involves a lot of steel development with these steel suppliers. Apart from that, we are also into coating, so a lot of coating suppliers associate with us, as you see on the right side. So what do we bring into this whole thing? We are a one-stop solution, we call ourselves, with line pipes, coatings, concrete coatings, bends and bend coatings, from single location. I mean, from Anjar, we cater to most of these requirements. And Anjar, as I said, is next to our Mundra or Kandla port. From there, we touch the globe. That's how we look at it. We have a track record of supplying to some of the most challenging projects across the globe. And here I would like to add, when we started off our pipe mill way back in 2000 odd, our pipes were not very probably accepted across the globe. The main reason being that there was always this psyche about Indian products. We were very proud to have broken this with our other associates in the industry, and we did a lot of forays into the European market and the US market. And to be honest, right now the Indian pipe companies are acknowledged as one of the best suppliers, reliable suppliers in the world. So the steel has yet to catch up. I would say, as far as the steel is concerned, if you saw the vendors list, we are still developing the steel. We are working with a lot of Indian steel mills. The process is on. But as far as pipe is concerned, I think we have done a reasonable good job on the on getting our stuff on the global map. Accreditations, of course, all the biggies that we talked about. We have active frame agreements with Statoil, Total, Petronas, and Saipem. They are big project owners. Yes, COVID and the associated issues related to oil and gas crisis the last few months have taken its toll. But I feel that it will still bounce back. Sourcing, of course, we just talked about it. And that's a small snapshot on how we look at it from our side. We are one of the leading suppliers from India, and we can take questions after the presentations are over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's quite an impressive portfolio of overseas presence. So our next presenter is Mr. Gupta from APL Apollo Limited. Mr. Gupta, can we hear out your presentation?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me well?
Yes, you're very clear and audible.
So thank you, Steelmint, for having me here. I'm glad to share our thoughts on our group, APL Apollo Tubes, and the structural steel tube industry where we are present. Thank you, everyone, all the audience who have logged in, and also thanks to the other panelists with us. So APL Apollo Tubes, we are the leading building material structural steel brand in India with 40% market share in structural steel tubes. When we say structural steel tubes, it is part of ERW tube category. And we are not focusing on water transportation, oil and gas, and precision tubes. Our only focus is building material, structural steel products. We have around 30 brands across 5 product categories with 2.5 million ton capacity. It makes us the largest steel tube producer also in the country with pan-India presence. Some of the facts for APL is we having 40% market share, player number 2 is having 12% market share. So the gap between player number 1 and 2 is quite wide. Our market share over the last 5 years has improved from 29% to 40% as at 31st March 2020. Capacity, if you see, over the last 3 years, we have almost doubled our capacity from 1.3 million ton to 2.5 million ton. And our presence across India is through 10 plants, 4 in north, 3 in south, 1 in east, and 1 in west. One point which I like to highlight here is our sales volume growth for the last 10 years. We have been able to grow our sales volume at 26% every year. And what we are proud to share with you is that there has been no year where our volume was below the last year. So every year we have grown consistently. In most of the difficult years like demonetization or GST implementation, our sales volume growth has been above 20%. Now, the reason for this performance is the way we have been able to develop the structural steel tube market in India, which has come through our innovation in new shapes of pipes, new sizes of pipes, introduction of new applications, our pan-India ever-expanding distribution network, and our focus on getting new applications in the building material category. So how we looked at the innovation of new products within the structural steel tube is that we identified the conventional construction products which our tubes are replacing, like conventional steel products, angles, channels, wood, aluminium profiles, reinforced cement concrete, and fabricated metal sheet. These are the 5 conventional construction products which we have focused to replace our products with. And structural steel tubes having low diameter in size and high diameter in size, depending on the load-bearing applications. We have been innovating, launching new products year on year, and the reason for that 26% plus growth is we are replacing the inefficient conventional construction product. So this is our sales volume mix, which the data we have gathered from our end consumers. 45% of our products go into housing construction, 25% go into commercial, 23% into infrastructure, and 7% is industrials and agriculture, which is very small. So our whole focus is on the building material, housing, commercial, and infrastructure. This is again the reason why we have been able to expand our volume at such a rapid pace, because if you see our channel to sell the products, it is similar to any building material company. At the top you have a brand, the manufacturer. Below them you have the distributors who stock the products and buy directly from the brand. Below the distributors, there is a pool of retailers, and then below them are the influencers who are like fabricators, architects, and structural engineers in our case, and then the end consumer who could be a household owner, he could be a developer or a contractor. Some of the structural steel applications, indoor homes and outdoor homes, what we have been able to develop are steel gates, roofing structures, fencing, sheds, commercial towers, staircase, handrails, etc. These are the applications of larger diameter tubes, which are used as high load bearing for various infrastructure and commercial projects. So it's all across our airports, our metro stations, city rail networks, the aero bridges, and fancy commercial towers in the metro cities in India. This is one thesis where we are very excited, and we believe that the structural steel tube is poised for a very strong growth over the next 5 to 10 years. So the total industry, structural steel tube industry today in India is 4 million ton on a steel consumption of 100 million ton approximately. This means that only 4% of the steel is used for the structural steel tube applications. Now, this is very little when you compare it with the global average and other nations. So global average is 9%, with Europe leading the pack with 11%. Even the Latin America market, which is also in the developing stage, like India, even they have 9% share. So we see there is a huge scope for the applications in structural steel tube to grow. We just plot the steel consumption trends which the government is targeting over the next 10 years. Like last year, we closed consumption at 90 to 95 million tons, with the target to reach steel consumption at 140 million ton by 2023 and above 250 million ton by 2030. And if we believe that the contribution for structural tubes can grow to 10% from 4% today, so we are seeing on a huge potential of almost 5 times the industry growth rate, which that's the kind of opportunity which we are sitting into. Now, the benefits for structural steel tubes over the conventional products are number one, no underwater usage, unlike in cement, concrete, RCC, flexibility in designs, quick erection on site, excellent strength to weight ratio, lightweight structure which helps in the reduction in the overall project cost, environmental friendly since it's not using groundwater, it doesn't add dust in the air like concrete RCC. Recyclability for steel tubes is high, and of course the fire resistance, easy to repair, sustainability, and high durability are the other benefits. We also try to see how the global structural steel tube industry has performed over the last 7-8 years, and what are the drivers which are helping the industry grow in the other geographies. So number one rationale is that the tube consumption is directly proportional to the gross fixed capital formation in any country, right? So as India is also going to get on a high GDP accelerated growth rate, we'll see that the consumption of tubes is definitely going to increase from 4% to desired level of 10%. Now, opportunities in India, where we see there are 4 segments where we believe will bring the maximum growth for structural steel tube. Number 1 is urban real estate. Number 2 is warehousing. Number 3, affordable housing, which is also rural housing. And number 4, infrastructure, which are airport and city rail networks, metro projects. Now, in urban, as we are growing more vertical, right? The higher the building is, more steel is used, and it is better for architects and engineers to go on the steel rather than the concrete RCC. So the trends over the last 3-4 years, if you see, since 2010, we have seen rapid pace of growth in on the buildings with high height. Right. So as this trend picks up in the upcoming years, we'll see that more and more tubes will be used. In warehousing, this is going to be very large space for growth. Nitish also did highlight about it, that the e-commerce, rural infrastructure, agricultural infrastructure, cold chain, etc., that will all bring very strong growth for warehousing. And right now, the PB industry is already doing warehouses with conventional steel products and box fabricated metal sheets. If you switch to tubular, you can reduce the weight of the structure and you can reduce the overall project cost, which becomes very good proposition for the investor community who is putting up warehouses and giving them on rental yields to on the returns. So if you are able to reduce the cost of the project, I think the demand can explode for warehouses. Again, affordable housing. These photographs are from US and Latin American markets, where the rural housing, which the project needs to be constructed within 15 to 18 months of launch. You build on tubes compartment wise, and you, like Lego toys, you just build and erect model. Airport city rail infrastructure is already there. All of our latest airport projects are being constructed on tubes, cylindrical, square, rectangular, all kind of hollow sections are being used. So as this trend emerges, the upcoming airport projects, metro projects, we are 100% sure that the consumption is going to increase over the coming years. This is how we envisage the future of construction. More and more tubular construction for the residential homes, for the commercial towers, and the urban infrastructure. So, Ruchira, with this, I would like to hand over the call to the next panelist.
Right. Thank you very much for that. So that's the end of our presentations, and we'll start off our question and answer round. And to start with, the biggest question on everybody's minds in the market is we are in COVID times, and the first quarter saw demand fall by approximately 25%. However, Q2, which we are in now, there is a recovery everywhere. Everybody talks about a recovery. So I would like to know from some of you how you see the demand panning out, starting from maybe Mr. Yogesh Kumar Bhatia. Maybe you could tell us how you are seeing recovery in the steel pipes and tubes market during this FY.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody once again and to the audience. Now, see, when I see the recovery, I won't say recovery, but I see that our government has been announcing and that the steel production capacity in this country is increasing every year, and the government has a plan that even a few days back in another webinar, they announced that they hope that by 2025, they have a target of going to 250 million tons, but I don't think that will be possible. But even if it is 200 million tons or near about that, so as Mr. Ujjwal Chakravarti also mentioned earlier, and in your opening presentation also by Mint, you are saying 8%, but we know that the world standard says that 10% of the steel produced gets consumed into tube industry. It is being used for the making the tubes. So we feel that if India is going anywhere near around, say, let's say 200 million tons of steel production, so we are looking at tube making capacity of nearly 20 million tons, which at present, if it is for the ERW tubes and all other tubes, I think in the beginning, Mint also showed about maybe 16 million tons. But by the information what we have, it's close to about 12 to 13 million tons, which is actually being used or in production. So we feel that in the next 5 years, there is a lot of demand for these tubes, which are going to come through various projects which the government has announced, irrespective of COVID, because to whichever sector people have been talking, or we have been visiting, they are talking about their projects, and maybe they have slowed down for the initial 3 months because there was a virtual lockdown. But all the industry people, we find that they have woken up, and now they want to cover the ground within these balance 9 months which are available with them. And like typically we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years that every year, even in this medium size section tube mills, every year about 1.2 million ton of capacity is being added in the country. So we feel that this growth will continue in the next at least 10 years, we feel. Because, if the government has the plans and for the steel capacity to be increased to say 300 million tons. So we feel there no reason that why the tube making capacity will not increase to that level. So we feel that there is at least 1.2 to 1.3 million ton capacity being added in the medium size range. That is for the tubes up to 8 inches diameter. And apart from that, we see a lot of demand coming in this gas pipeline and water distribution, for the cities. So we see that only hindrance is that people still in our country, about 40 to 50% of the capacity which is there in the country, people are using mills of very low productivity and not of the technology level what is being used in European countries or developed countries. So there we feel that there is a lot of scope for replacing the existing low productive tube mills. So all the organized sector companies where they are going with the very high productive mills. Case in example is APL Apollo and Tata Steel. Both the companies I have been watching them and closely associated also. So we see that the high productive mills, as more and more such mills come, the old low productive mills, they are going to close down and will be replaced by these high productive mills. So we feel that there is a lot of new capacity coming into this country, and on an average, at least up to 8-inch mills also we feel that 1.2 to 1.3 million ton capacity is being added every year. So I do not find a lot of people have been saying that no, the tube industry, the growth is not much or in the future is not good. But this I have been hearing it for last 30 years in my life, and but I have seen this industry growing and growing, and I am absolutely certain that it will still follow the same route in the next 10 years also.
Right. Thank you so much for that. That's a bullish long-term view.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know from Mr. Sudhir Goyal, what is your short-term view for recovery in the steel pipes and tubes business, which means we're looking at this FY. What's your forecast?
Good afternoon, Ruchira, again. And say, as far as COVID is concerned, my view is that COVID has definitely dented demand across the sectors, particularly if we say the pipe and tube per se. As there are talks that COVID has yet to touch peak in our country in coming month or so. So at the same time, I'm quite hopeful that demand will recover early part of the next year, say 2021, from say Jan onwards and Feb onwards. Demand should recover, and it should recover in a very fast pace. As we have seen about 6 to 9 months of lull period of demand or no growth period. So I'm quite hopeful that in next year we should get very good demand growth.
Right, thank you. Mr. Renil Anthony, do you subscribe to the same view that next year we have to wait until next fiscal for a good demand recovery? What's your opinion?
Basically, with respect to our presence, I mean, since we are more in the oil and gas pipeline industry sector,
Right.
I would say, of course, initially when the COVID started, I mean, not only in the oil and gas pipeline, but all throughout the sector, whether it is steel or automobile or any sector, everyone was affected and people were finding it difficult to get used to. And now people are moving positively. I mean, things are changing. So people have accepted this new normal. And with respect to the oil and gas pipeline industry, I would say it is not only the COVID which has affected, but also the oil prices which have been going crazy all throughout the world. So that has also tremendously affected the oil and gas pipeline industry, which we, as of now, are not very clear, but we feel by the early next year, at least the oil prices should also recover, because it cannot remain like this. If it remains like this, then I think all the big oil and gas companies will just keep suffering, and all the pipeline projects will just be put on hold or maybe just postponed. But with respect to India, or with respect to Indian gas pipelines, we have seen that in the recent past, in the last maybe 1 or 2 months, we have seen some pipelines tenders coming up from GAIL, and there's also a good expectation of more number of pipelines, as Nitish also presented that 1,000 crores of tenders is expected from GAIL. So we are seeing a positive movement, and we expect by maybe early next year or so, with the recovery in the oil prices also, the expectation will be much more positive, and the demand should come back to normalcy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Next question is for Mr. Anubhav Gupta. You know, APL Apollo has spoken about the rural urban flip flop that has happened. 60-40 has turned into 60 going on the rural side. So Steelman's understanding is that here you might face competition from, you know, patra based manufacturers, which are low cost and they possibly suit the rural demand. So what is your opinion on this, and how will you cater to this market? What kind of pricing will you have, knowing that your competitor is very good at price sensitivity? Mr. Gupta.
Thanks, Ruchira. So I guess, see, Patra has been present for ages, and the HR coil-based structural steel tube industry has grown despite Patra over the last 15, 20 years in a big way. You have seen our growth. So this market was always present, but I guess the trends what we have witnessed over the last 5 to 10 years is that even the rural consumer, he wants to have a solid structure at his place, whether he is building it for his house or for commercial or for a shop, etc. He wants a good quality product, okay, and he does not want to compromise against the quality. Ultimately, that structure, his family, he himself is going to use, right? He may be sleeping below that structure, right? Like any country where we see the consumerism taking shape and people becoming more aspirational, they want to go with good quality products. They are preferring HR coil based steel tubes versus Patra. But yes, some segment, say maybe 2-3% of segment might get disrupted if the gap between Patra and HR coil based steel tube increases a lot, which is the case today. But that will only impact, I would say, 2-3% of the overall industry demand, not beyond that, because the Indian consumer also at the same time is going for better quality products. In fact, in last 4-5 months, I'm glad to share with everyone present here that our market share has increased to 50%, which was 40% in March 20 fiscal year. Our market share in the first 5 to 6 months of current fiscal year has grown to 50%. And this is all because of our strong, aggressive sales strategy, marketing strategy in the rural markets of India. We knew that there will be a huge uptick in the rural economy for the next 6 to 9 months after massive reverse migration which took place in India. Almost 150 million working class population shifted back to their hometowns, tier 2, tier 3 towns and rural villages during the lockdown. So we knew that the rural economy will outperform the urban economy for a good 6 to 9 months, and we aggressively marketed our products in rural areas, and the benefits are already visible. So Patra market has always there. We all the tube companies in India have grown despite Patra, but yes, when the gap between Patra and the primary material widens a lot, only 2-3% of market gets not beyond.
Mr. Chakraborty, are you also seeing the same trend at Tata Steel, that the rural economy has given you an opportunity to actually increase market share? However, Patra prices might actually dent the market to about 2 to 3%. What is your experience, please?
Yeah, actually, so since you also raised about COVID, so there is a COVID angle to it. See, first of all, the rural economy, rural and small town economy is growing, and a good monsoon actually has given the spending power. So spending power and the aspiration of the rural is growing. When I say rural, I also talk about semi-urban, because please see what's happening. Just now, the trend of COVID is showing that it is no more work at your station, but work from anywhere. primarily work from home. So people are actually migrating from their big cities to the semi-town and the rural. So therefore, the aspiration of the people is growing. So I see two things. One is the good monsoon where the spending power has increased, and another is people aspiration staying there is going. So these two things are definitely giving an upstick about the demand spurt. And the other thing is that perhaps with the rural economy, people have also started to understand that it is better to, work for to avail those schemes which, like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or similar schemes where low cost affordable housing is also a new reality. So that's the area on which you can say as a bottom of the pyramid approach where perhaps we see there's a significant opportunity for growth.
Right, thank you. Mr. Goyal, what is your experience? This rural-urban divide and this, large companies versus the small companies, what are you seeing? Are you also seeing, some small towns and rural areas buying more at this point?
Yes, Ruchira, I agree with Mr. Gupta, whatever Mr. Gupta has said about the rural and urban divide. As there is lots of spending in rural network, so I'm also very much quite hopeful that in rural segment the demand will increase much more than the urban segment. And one more thing I will like to say that so-called whatever jo Patra market, about the Patra market, HR coil pipe and tube products demand is increasing gradually day by day as quality consciousness and awareness of the people is increasing, particularly in the rural segment, I'll say. It is quite evident that quality awareness is increasing in customer of our country, and quality product sales are increasing.
Right. Thank you. Okay, going back to Mr. Chakrabarti, one really specific question we have. As per our understanding at Steelmint, your distributor network is rather small and we have a figure of 25 distributors versus your competitors where the distributors run into perhaps hundreds. So what is the specific reason why you have very small distributor base, and are you changing that?
Yeah, so our retail strategy is in several layers. So it's when you say distributors, then there's a layer after that. There's a retail sector, there's a retailer, there's the dealers. So if you count them, it's huge. That's point number one. And to that extent, so this 28 or 30 distributors, they are spread across the country, and they have the retailers, sub-retailers, and the dealers below them. So we have a very, very structured network through which we operate. And this is not only in tube, this is for the entire steel business that Tata Steel operates. That's the structure that we follow. And that's point number one. The point number two is that since you see that our presence in terms of the volume is also other than retail. So we are everywhere. We are retail, we are project, we have also a B2B segment. We have also a segment related to auto. So therefore, considering the volume in the retail and considering the structure that we think that this is the optimum number that which we operate.
No plans to beef up distribution, especially at this time when you need to make inroads into rural areas?
Yeah, so it's as I said, that when you have to do, we'll have to take a call as based on a demand we can add, and also we can add the dealers. And another thing is that we are also directly reaching to our retail segment towards e-commerce platform. And that's a significant push where we are getting directly order from them. Of course, through the current existing structure only, but that's where we can reach more and more to the rural and to the remote area through our e-commerce platform.
Right, thank you. Question for Mr. Bhatia. What kind of new plant orders are you seeing? What does your order book look like this year and maybe for the next 2 years? And what kind of capacities can we expect in the next 2 to 3 years? You spoke about an addition of 1.2 million ton capacity every year. Is this going to happen this year and the next year as well?
Ruchira,
First of all,
this
please
is
tell us about your order book.
okay. See, our company, PP Rolling Mill, because of the reputation of our quality and very productive plants, which we have been supplying, order book, in spite of the COVID period, our order book has been, are hopeful that even this year, we'll definitely touch our sales turnover, what we did last year. And we are hopeful we might improve upon that also. So there is absolutely no doubt about that. And we see a lot of new projects under discussions and negotiations, and because of the travel restrictions only, some of the projects are being held up, and where our customers, they have been talking to us that, okay, when we can start the travels and move further, because when we supply a project, especially the turnkey projects, our team, they have to travel. And you'll be surprised that even during COVID times, we were carrying out our erection commissioning, and not only in India but all over the world. Our people were working in African nation, they were working in neighboring countries, they were working in India. Even during this COVID period, we commissioned a tube mill even in Chhattisgarh. So we find absolutely no this thing let down on this side front. And because the requirement for the productive mills, the high productivity mills, because the PP rolling mill has always gone for as a equipment supplier where you can match with the European standards. So we feel that as the country is looking at the present scenario where customer is demanding high productive equipment, they're demanding product quality which is matching the developed countries' standards. So we feel that we are very, very bullish about this side. That definitely it's going to grow. And
Any for the number of plants you're setting up this year with a comparative of last year?
In the last 3 years, because after our collaboration with the Germans, we started 3 years back, and we have done about 10 lines, and about another 5 lines are in the pipeline, which are going on. And we have just launched our lines in African market, and there we see a huge scope, because we are going to be an alternative to the European suppliers. So, we are very, very bullish about this, definitely.
Right. Next question is to Mr. John. Mr. John, we discussed GAIL's, tenders, which are pretty attractive and they're being rolled out. What about the other government projects? We have been hearing about delays because of COVID and also because of the economic slowdown. So what is the latest on the government projects? Are you seeing any delays here? And can you name some of these projects too?
Yeah, Ruchira, I've been an eternal optimist. When we go through a rough time, we always see the other side, the brighter side. So there's also always a coin called, and at the end of the pipe, there's a light always, as we call it. So we did go through some rough times as we saw COVID and crude and meltdown and stuff. But it of course affected the construction. We primarily are talking of oil and gas pipeline construction. It did affect, but the public sector undertakings that we have in the country, they all regrouped and probably got back on track. And just as in when we were taking the first hit of COVID, somewhere around April, May we got directives that they are continuing the construction, and that was a big relief, because we had a few orders, and at that point of time, since the scenario was very hazy, the direction is shown by the PSUs, the oil companies like Indian Oil and BPCL and GAIL. Business was back to normal. Of course, there was a slowdown, but the business was moving in. And of course, the government took some initiatives there when they said they're going to look further on the infrastructure development, especially the gas grid. In fact, the Minister for Petroleum, I think a few days back, just mentioned about some 70,000 crores of investment in laying gas pipelines and crude pipelines. We have seen a lot of stress being put on development of the northeastern corridor, the eastern states, and right up to Assam and the 7 states there on the top. So there's a lot of shift which has happened, and yes, the PSU business has taken it forward. We are looking at multiple projects from GAIL for gas lines, from Indian Oil for LPG lines. These are all into construction phase, and it's all in the public domain. The good thing is that, yeah, a couple of years back, we had a slowdown in the domestic market, and there were not too many projects to talk about. But last year, probably 1 million tons. This year, another 1 million tons, and maybe going by the way the minister has been initiating action, I think 1 million ton every year would be a reality for us, and that's going to be a huge turner for oil and gas pipelines.
Wow, that's quite a forecast. 1 million tons a year. How does the foreign markets? You have a very great presence in the overseas market. How is that looking at this point for the SNS products?
Yeah, so as far as our international market is concerned, the same thing happened there. Most of the big oil companies, I think in some of the slides we showed that the big ones like ENI and Saipem and Chevrons, they all took an immediate withdrawal once the crude came down. It's not more of the COVID side, but yes, COVID was a reason for the crude meltdown because the consumption went off, and they withdrew their capex for this year. And then probably the reaction started, and right now it's in a process of getting back on stream. There's some of the projects which were up there for bidding but withdrawn from the market, but then a few months down the line they all came back. So hopefully, I think with the it sort of normalizes, and as somebody said, I think Renil said that probably it is looking to better itself as we go forward. Most of the international projects that were there will come back on the drawing board, and that's where the market will firm up again. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is there is a lot of pockets that have been formed. Certain markets are going full steam. Certain markets are on a slow growth. And Middle East, I saw Saudi Aramco withdraw all their projects, which is one of the biggest suppliers. So those kind of impacts do happen because of this knee-jerk reaction from this exploratory companies. The rig counts came down in all the markets. But I feel that things are back on track, are getting back on track. And as I said, I'm an optimist always.
Africa is the next great big story because Middle East, it's in a sunset mode. So would you agree that you could look at Africa for SNS products?
Well, Africa, we have seen a few projects come in, but not the kind of momentum that we have seen in other markets. Yes, it's too early for us to say, but there are certain markets which are developing, Uganda, Tanzania to talk about, and a lot of long distance pipeline projects to evacuate oil and bring it to the ports outside and export it because the consumption is very low inside. So there are a few projects which have been, sort of earmarked that side. And the good thing is that there are a lot of oil and gas companies, Total for specific, or ENI or Saipem, Italian companies. They have all invested a lot of money in that subcontinent, that continent. So we feel that that market will develop. Though if you look at a comparison between that and the Middle East, they're way behind still.
Sir, so I have a question for you. Since, can you give your opinion on the future of steel imports in commercial and API grades per se, specifically after the government's push on Atmanirbhar and the ongoing tension at the border? Thank you.
So, I'm not a steel specialist to talk about, but I can give you my views. So we have over 100 million tons plus, somebody said 110 million tons of steel making capacity. And it's still growing, as we call it. So probably we have the wherewithals to make it and use it itself and maybe export. And it's not a crazy thing that last 2 months I was told that a lot of Indian steel ended up exporting a huge amount into the international market. Even to the extent China, it's reverse. A few years back we were importing from China. So that's one good thing that we saw from the Indian steel market, very resilient. When we come to specifically our oil and gas segment, I also saw that we have increased our so-called dependence on domestic steel mills. We have been developing that. So there is this special grade of steel that we use for our oil and gas pipelines coming up very well. The new capacities that have been added in the steel mills have more or less aligned with the best in the world. So we are very comfortable with the domestic steel mills right now. And only in some very, very tough grades, very, very stringent grades, we do go for imports. I think the stress from the government, as you asked, is to utilize what is made inside. Even to the extent of pipes, we have been talking about the same thing. We have a huge capacity of oil and gas pipeline, structural and others. Even water structure is a big infrastructure, is a big segment for us here. So we feel that every country has its own protection policies, and we also feel that we have a huge capacity, steel, pipes, and others, and the infrastructure has to definitely be dependent on the domestic products first, and if required, then bring in the imports. So I think the government's direction towards restricting or maybe promoting the domestic steel is pretty valid, and we support that fully.
Right. So question for Mr. Bhatia.
Yep.
Mr. Bhatia, we've been hearing about the DFT technology. So is your company bringing in this technology for some of the newer plants?
Ruchira, yes, we have, a tie-up with the German company called Zoyte, which was part of Voestalpine until Voestalpine was taken over by Siemens. So this company has been manufacturing, and in fact, they are the pioneer in developing this technology. And as per our technical collaboration agreement, that the technology from them to us is coming in phases, and definitely it is in the pipeline. And initially, we will be supplying this DFT technology plant with partial imports, not the full plant import, but partial, just the technology equipment from there, and rest all the terminal equipment and the support equipment and the electrification from India. And then finally, the full plant to be built in India. Yes, it is in the pipeline. Yeah.
Okay, and a similar question to, well, let me ask Tata Steel. Mr. Chakraborty, would you consider this technology? Do you find it expensive or useful? Is it all the things that it promises about when we read about it that saves a lot of costs?
Yeah, I think as our continuous interest of growth and development, we always look for alternate technology and the emerging technology. So this is a good technology because it is promising. It is actually eliminate one process of the conventional one. This is an efficient technology. So, people are adopting this. This is the future of the tube making. So definitely we will always assess the requirement, and then as and when we are able to invest, we can think of those in those technologies.
Mr. Gupta, you are a user of this technology. Do you find it good? So just a brief answer on how good the DFT technology is, since you are a user of this technology.
So we installed this technology around 2017. Okay, today almost 500,000 ton of steel tube is being produced through DFT and at all the 4 zones in India. How we have found it useful is to improve the serviceability to our distributor clients. So, so if you remember Asian Paints, they had come out with this marketing concept of Mere Wala Pink, right? Earlier, what they used to do was they used to have stock of different color of paints at their warehouses and at their clients' stockyards. So the inventory level used to be very high, whereas how they revolutionized the whole industry was by selling the white paints and putting the paint dispensing machines at every retailer shop, right? So you would just press the button of any shade, and the white paint box will have the color paint ready to be sent to the customer's home. So on the same lines, we thought that with DFT, the kind of customization, the kind of sizes, the fast speed on which you can produce the pipes. So we initiated the concept Mere Wala Size. So distributor just orders the or give order on a particular size and shape. With DFT, instead of changing the circular rollovers and then the square rectangular rollovers, there is no need, right? So the changeover time has declined to 30 minutes versus 8-9 hours when you do both circular and rectangular or square. So he punches the order, and on the same day we are able to get the order dispatched also. So we think that DFT has the ability to revolutionize this whole structural steel tube industry in India.
Right, thank you for that. And I have a participant's question now, and this one is for you, Mr. John. It's from Sahil Sangvi, and he's a research analyst at Monarch Net Worth Capital. He's saying several expansion projects of oil and gas companies like HPCL's Barmer refinery and other IOCL projects have been stopped and delayed due to the pandemic. So consumption of oil and gas has also been impacted. So how does this impact demand for SNS and ERW pipes? And he has a specific question, given impact on the order book of the Wells Fund Corp. So can we have your answer?
So, as
Mr.
I said,
John?
again, I'll start off saying, let's be an optimist rather than being a pessimist. We just came out of some terrible, initial 3 months of this, 3 to 6 months of this year. What gives us buoyancy is the fact that there are a lot of gas and crude and oil pipelines still being debated. The refinery that is talked about is not shelved; it is still there. Yes, there has been a slowdown. I still agree. Contracts have been, I think, getting issued for the HRL refinery pipeline. So from what I understand, I just mentioned a few minutes back that the minister just talked about a 70,000 crore investment in gas pipelines and other pipelines for oil and gas purpose. We talked about huge CGD business, 70% of the population to be connected on the CGD lines, 30% of the total, 50% of the total area of the country being networked with CGD line. 280 cities by 2025 will be all connected. So what are we talking? This is a huge country. They were talking of huge networks. Though the CGD network is on the lower dia size, the big trunk lines may not be there, but we are still talking of consumption. And as I said, we look forward to probably 1 million tons of business further again. We will be competing and trying to take as much as possible. So for me, if you ask me, oil and gas, yes, there was the blip which happened because of COVID and crude and whatnot. But the way the government has been initiating cross-country pipelines, product pipelines and stuff, and the way the other thing that I wanted to talk about is, yes, as far as water infra is concerned, we are facing a lot of problem as far as the funding is concerned. They are mostly state funded. And we have seen in various states like MP, UP, Rajasthan, that's where the stress is coming from. And water pipelines are a big part of our portfolio also. But having said that, we are primarily oil and gas suppliers. So the funding that comes from the center to the state and all the GST imbroglio that we see right now is creating a bit of stress on those kind of infrastructure projects. As an example, I would say that in the last 1 year, I think MP itself had almost like 100,000 tons of, 1 million tons of water pipeline projects for irrigation and water and so on. How much of them has actually fructified? Yes, that's a challenge there, because the EPC contractors are not ready to move on as the states are running short of funds. When it comes to the PSU business, let me assure you, they are prompt with the projects. They are funding the project. These are already approved projects from the center. So they are all getting on with the stream. The construction is getting back on stream. So I think the oil and gas segment is still looking good.
Thank you for that. So we have been taking the questions from the audience, and that was the first one that was answered. And Nitish, if you have the second question from the participants, could you shoot it off, please?
Thank you so much, Ruchira. So the question is for Mr. Anthony, right? So one of the participants says that as per his understanding, there's a policy by the government which mandates the use of 15% domestically produced raw material for manufacturing products to be supplied to government tenders. So so he has two questions to it. One is, what is your take on this decision by the government? And second is, how is this impacting the imports and how are you adding value to the Indian pipe mill industry? Mr. Anthony, if you can answer this.
So with respect to, yes, I mean, what is mentioned, it is right, 15% of value addition is needed domestically. So if you look at the oil and gas tenders in India, so these oil and gas tenders, pipeline tenders are mainly for the pipe. And when we consider pipe as a material, then the 85% of the cost of a pipe is a steel, and remaining is maybe 15% or 20% is the conversion which the pipe mill does. Plus, these are also, the government tenders also required coated pipes. So when we consider the value addition done by the pipe mills in India, which is from coil or from plate to pipe, and then the coating which is needed the external coating which is required on the pipe and then supplied. So these 15% or 20% of value addition in India or within India or domestically is covered by that. So if that is, if it's only with respect to that, then of course imports is a possibility. Still, API grade coils and API grade plates can still be imported. But again, the next question comes is with the Indian steel mills coming up and the big capacities they have in India. So is it really viable that the steel API grade steel can be imported or not? So if we have to look at, if I have to look at as my company being a Japanese steel trading company, then frankly speaking, I do not expect much of my presence or value addition with respect to supply of Japanese steel into India for the Indian pipeline, domestic Indian pipeline tenders. But there is potential. There are many imports still coming from Korea. There are many imports still coming from China. But in the recent past, we have seen that the Indian pipe mills have been increasing the steel supply from the domestic steel mills. So as Mr. John also mentioned that in the last 1 year or 2 years, or maybe in the last 3 years, the buying of steel from the domestic steel mills have increased as compared to earlier times when API grade primarily used to be imported steel only. But the capacities have been increased, the technology have been improved in India, and Indian steel mills are very much competent to supply steel for the Indian domestic steel pipeline tenders. Indian pipeline tenders, which is by GAIL or GSP. So definitely the exposure or the presence of Indian steel has increased over the years. But still there is some room for imports still to come in.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
And Nitish, if you have another question, could you please shoot it off?
Sure. So one question asked by one of the participants is for Mr. Chakrabarti. So the participant is asking, after the acquisition of Bhushan Steel, how much capacity is dedicated for structural tubes and how much is dedicated for SNS, that is specifically for oil and gas, sir? If you can highlight some of your thoughts around this.
Yeah, so this particular large dia plant is primarily for oil and gas and the water pipeline, primarily oil and gas. So that is why we started developing the steel, for perhaps before acquisition, they used to buy steel, but now we have started producing the API grade steel in our Bhushan Steel Angul plant as well as the Kalinganagar plant. So therefore our focus from this plant is the value added primarily is for the oil and gas segment. But having said this, since large dia is a very, very promising segment in the structural, so we have allocated space for this. And as you know that this plant is a large plant, it has got a huge capacity and the whole capacity we have not utilized. And the downstream is about 100 KT is primarily for the coated, which is applied for the oil and gas. But the upstream, which have the additional capacity of 200, 300 KT, which part of it can be always, or we are actually doing dedicated to large dia structural as well as large dia water pipe. That's where we are currently looking.
Question from Sailesh Golas, one of the participants is, how do you see Raipur market, Patra prices? And an additional question from my side is, what kind of a comparison does it make with the products that you make? So I'm asking for the price gap.
See, I cannot answer your first question as we are not present in Raipur market. So I
From your
cannot answer
intelligence
that.
or some other market.
As far as your question is concerned, we make pipes and tubes from HR coils only. And as the price difference has increased a lot in last 3-4 months, as HRC prices have been skyrocketed, as we all know that HRC has been exported out of our country. So HRC prices has been on a shoot. So there is a huge gap now. Earlier, the gap was in the range of 4 to 5 rupees a kg. Nowadays, the difference is 7+. So there is a challenge for HRC pipes right now.
Right, thank you. So there's a question from Vamsi Mohan. She's saying she's from Tata Steel, and the question is it's on IHB segment. How brand conscious are consumers when it comes to structural tubes? What should be the company's focus to increase this consciousness amongst consumers? So Mr. Chakraborty, can you answer this? It's from someone in your company.
Yeah. So I think this is a very, very interesting question and very, very important question. So basically, are you able to hear me properly? You have difficulty?
Yes, you're absolutely clear.
Okay, fine. So basically, this in retail, it's actually the brand which is sold, and the brand consciousness for a product is very, very important, because after all, a person is buying a product along with its offering and along with the promise which is it is offered, it is being serviced. So brand actually encompasses everything. It is also the product, it is the features, it is the services, it is the promise. So therefore, a brand, according to us for Tata Steel, all our product is actually sold through our brand. And if you ask me about the hierarchy, it is the promise of the Tata brand. That is what it is sold first. So to me, the brand is very important in the mind of consumer, and that is where we need to work continuously. And there's a promise, a lot of in this actually segment for this, for Tata Structura in the retail, and also Tata Pipe.
So we have one question from Mr. Rahul Agrawal, and that question is for Mr. Anubhav Gupta. So he wants to understand, what is the growth plan for APL Apollo in the next 5 years? So if you can just throw some light on that, please.
Thanks, Nitish. Ruchira, I will also like to share my view on the previous question about the brand in the structural steel tube.
Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, 20 years ago, would you have ever imagined that today you would go and buy a branded PVC plumbing pipe for your bathroom? Or for that matter, did anyone imagine 20 years ago that today we would go and buy a branded cable and wire for our house, which will go inside a wall and you won't see the cable for next 20 years? Same goes for tiles, same goes for paints, same goes for plywood. So structural steel tubes are also part of building material category, right? It is just that the companies, the brands have just started to connect with the consumer. They have just started to educate the consumer about the brand, about the quality, about the characteristics. And this is a long run exercise, but with global, with large players like Tata and APL Apollo and other players, at least they have started this brand connect. And as this builds over the next 3, 4, 5 years, the brand awareness within structural steel tubes will be very high. We are very much sure, because ultimately structural steel tubes provide strength to a structure where the family members are sleeping, okay, without any concern. So I guess we have a lot of work to do to build brand in this particular category. The next question, Nitish, about the growth plans. So APL Apollo Tubes right now has 2.5 million ton capacity. Last year we did 1.6 million ton in terms of sales volume. So for next 3 years we have sufficient capacity to be able to grow at a high double digit. That's what our plan is. And once we hit 2.5 million ton in terms of sales volume, we are planning to get into new structural steel tube categories, which are mainly high diameter, high thickness, wherein we want to convert PV construction into more and more tubular construction. So one is that category, and second, for the low diameter tubes, we are targeting color coated pipes. So these are the two growth areas for APL Apollo after we ramp up our capacity to 2.5 million.
Thank you. I have a question from Suresh Narasimhan from Shali Ventures Private Limited, Japan, saying it was wonderful presentation from all the speakers. My question is, do we have any specific requirement or demand from Japan region? Mr. Renil, can you take that question? Could you perhaps share your experience dealing with Japan if you are importing anything from there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I said, in the oil and gas industry, in the pipeline industry, we do have a presence. So what we look at here is three different parts where we try to fulfill or we try to value add. One is buying pipes from India for the international projects. Second is selling steel from Japan to the Indian pipe mills so that they can value add and sell it to the pipe tenders, whichever is there in the international oil and gas tenders. And third is we supply the steel to the Indian pipe mills and buy back the pipe from the Indian pipe mills. So these are the three kind of value additions or engagement we try to do, and we try to work with the Indian pipe mills. And I would say we fairly have a very good presence in India in the oil and gas sector, and we have a good reach among the top Indian pipe mills. But our presence here, as I said, is more kind of exports from India for the pipes, and also selling steel from Japan into India for the Indian pipe mills, who are again selling the pipes for the international oil and gas tenders. So yes, there is a demand. It is not more like a big commodity like how we have for the Indian domestic pipeline tenders, but it is more kind of a niche segment. So since we are a Japanese steel trading company, and traditionally we have been working with Japanese pipe mills and steel mills, and where these products are sold globally. So we also have a presence globally, almost each and every part of the world. So that is how we try to value add.
Thank you. Nitish?
So we have Mr. Abhijit Mishra from Tata Steel, and his question is obviously to Mr. Chakrabarti. He wants to understand, how do you see the digital transformation will impact the steel tubes market space when most of the consumer segments are focusing on digital means for more penetration in the market?
Oh yes, actually, as a learning of the COVID, perhaps this is the largest disruptor. We can call it a creative disruptor, which has helped organization to learn on many things. So if you recollect, in the month of April, when we started, in the first month, we were actually at a loss what to do. But then business started as usual. Even all the people, and most of the people who can handle their work from home and from anywhere, they have started and handling. So it's the digital transformation is in terms of the connectivity. Today we can connect any customers at an immediately within no time at multiple geography. So the digital transformation actually helped to reach out better, to collaborate better. That's the primarily on the software aspect of this doing of conducting business. The other one is also as using the digital e-commerce platform. These days, as the previous question on the brand, if someone wants to buy a brand, and if he has a brand promise, so the person can buy from anywhere of the world. As we see in our example of Ashiana, what actually happens, a person who is staying remotely, let's say a person who is staying in Dubai and his old parents are staying in India, he actually buys Tata Steel because he knows that when he buys Tata, it has got a strong brand promise. And he digitally, through this platform, he ordered the product, and the product is delivered to his house at his parents. This is a fantastic connect. Connect between the consumer, connect between the producer, connect between the service provider, and connect between the user. So that's the platform that we use actually seamlessly. And Tata Steel as a whole, since it has pioneered in the space of digital, we have seen it's very, very promising, and it can actually do a game changer in this, the way of conducting business.
But it is product specific. So I'll move on to the next one really. This is a very, very specific question. It's a technical one from Hardik Shah saying, would appreciate it if someone can throw light on specific pipe size range for CGD requirement and structural tubes requirement. So Mr. John, could you take this question?
Yeah, as I said, mostly the CGD business is mostly on the lower dia size and primarily made up of ERW pipes, HFW pipes, some cases seamless pipes also. So I think it's more or less, if I look at a compilation of requirements that have been generated in CGD, there are two segments. One is the front end disbursement segment, which is like 4-inch and 6-inch pipes. And the feeder lines which go into feeding those lines is somewhere around 8, 10, and 12. Nothing much more beyond that. So this is the normal range that I have seen from the CGD business. But yes, there are multiple pockets. There are multiple companies. So we as Welspun have been trying to see if we can get it standardized so that it becomes easier, it becomes more project friendly, it becomes more faster. If at all, it can be standardized, and we have a set range of say sizes and thicknesses which can go into CGD. That's as far as CGD is concerned. The other part, I think I'll let somebody else to answer the other part of the question.
Oh, okay, I think I will take that. I will answer that. See, for a company, if they are looking for setting up a business for CGD segment and the structural, the typical size range will be to cover the range right up to 8 inches. They can cover the CGD line as John said, the feeder lines and the front line, which I think when it goes to the distribution, when it, the gas is delivered in the houses, it is the half-inch pipes, So it is right from half-inch to 8 inches, which cover the CGD line. And in structural also, if you keep that range, it's quite a lot of segment which you can cover. So if somebody is setting up a new project, what we have seen today, most of the new projects, they are covering their size range right from say that half-inch nominal bore or a 21 millimeter OD tube, or you can say 25 by 25 squares to going up to maybe 150 by 150 squares. So I think that is the segment, the size range which one should be looking for.
Just wanted to add, there is a tendency now, the domestic part, the ones that go into the homes, primarily are getting replaced by SDP pipes. So that's why I didn't take the half-inch, 1-inch and stuff. Okay. So it's more or less being replaced. The MS pipes, mild shield pipes are replaced by SDP. And there are some pretty reliable products which are available, and I think that's cost efficient also, easy to lay. So probably I think that's the reason.
Thank you for that. So we'll now take the last two questions from the audience. And Nitish, if you have something ready, could you please ask that question from the audience?
So this question is essentially being directed to Mr. Chakravarti, but I guess Mr. Gupta will also be able to answer this question. So this is from Mr. Durga Kheria. He's the channel partner for Tata Tubes. So his question my question is, product like structural steel, where the consumer involvement is very low as compared to products like paints, how do you project the quality over price to the user? So this is from a very sales driven perspective, and he wants the viewpoint of leadership. So Mr. Chakravarti, if you can just quickly answer this question, please.
Yeah, well, that's quite a deep question, Durga. This and very interesting. So yeah, we for example, it's want to reach out to your consumer, right? And we often say that what is the percentage of engagement of a lady in the house for buying that product? If she is engaged in buying the product, that means the real user who appreciate the product is wish to buy. So it's the product has to be such so that the engagement of the end users is more. And if the product is really intermediate, or let's say if the product is generic, then it would be less. Therefore, what Mr. Gupta has also said, that a lot of work on this particular segment in structural steel is about value creation. Now, value creation can be in many ways, whether you do a coating applications, aesthetic point of view, whether you can do, let's say, a final product in terms of, let's say, a solution point of view, how do you do it? So if you want to go closer to the customer by creating value, by adding all these features, then the quality consciousness or engagement of end users will be more and more. And that's where the producers are more engaged. For example, if I give the example of automotive, automotive is an excellent example. Automotive companies, they actually work very close with the customer or the supplier, I'm sorry. So they actually engage in your production process, your supply chain process, your raw material process. And whenever there is a problem, they actually come over to your place and they will tell you, okay, what process intervention you need to do. And that's what we have learned about various automotive users. So the customer engagement, when the value proposition of the product enhances, whether it is in terms of quality of the product, whether in terms of usage on the aesthetic aspect, on the strength aspect. So all propositions in terms of services, when it strengthens and the consumer is engages, then the product value proposition increases. That's why probably more and more value creating opportunity gives you benefit in terms of the product profitability.
Thank you for that. So now it's going to be the last question. And this question is from Danish Goyal and touches upon prices, which we haven't spoken about much. So I'm going to rephrase the question. He's asking that how are you covering the rising costs of the hot rolled coils? So are you able to pass on the rise in costs to your consumers? So maybe Mr. Sudhir Goyal, can you answer that question? How are you managing to keep your costs down with the steel industry really chasing up the prices? Mr. Sudhir Goyal, see him here. Mr. John, could you take that question? How are you managing to keep your costs down with the steel producers giving very bullish forecasts for steel prices month on month?
As far as Welspun is concerned, I think what we do, we are project-based businesses, and on each and every project, we do have a normal tie-up with the relevant steel mills, and we do take precautions on that, and especially during these times when the volatility is so high, we don't keep too much of an exposure. Yes, we would love to have the steel prices very constant, because the project bidding itself takes its own time. It's not that it is decided in a day or two. It probably takes months. So at the most, we definitely would like to keep a tag on that in terms of bid pricing, which is coming in from our supporting steel mills, so that we don't get hit by that kind of a explosion in prices, as we call it.
Thank you very much. So our panelists, Mr. Gupta and Mr. Goyal, have been having internet issues, so they have dropped off for some reason. But we have come to the end of this webinar, and I'd like to say a big thanks to all of you. I think we have got a lot of data, information, news, and Steel Mint would be so happy to absorb it all. So a big thanks to all of the panelists, and a special thanks to all the participants. And the message to the participants is that we will be editing this webinar and publishing it on YouTube. So if you want to hear it out again, or if you want to share it with your friends, you could be doing that. And the last message, well, the sponsor has been PP Rolling Mills Manufacturing Co. Private Limited. This company is an expert in commissioning products and plants. And its specialty is to take a project from conception to commissioning. It's a leading turnkey project supplier from India for design, engineering, manufacturing, and erection and commissioning of hot rolling mills for several products. So that would be it, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time, and take care, and do look out for more webinars from the Steel Mint Group. Thank you.